That 4th of July weekend Mr. Upsy was hiding under our bed except occasionally to come out for treats and food, and I didn't think much of it because he's always been a bit skittish of the fireworks and whatnot. He didn't give me much opportunity to realize just how much he was struggling until the morning after the 4th of July, and then it was clear his behavior and all was not just anxiety related. It was incredibly scary to see him in such shape. So, on Monday, July 5, 2021, I took my gorgeous cat Upsy to the emergency care center because he was having trouble breathing. He was basically seen immediately because he was having such troubles. Due to COVID-19, procedures were different when you take your animal to the vet or to the emergency room, so I had to hand him over through my car door, and I was not permitted to come in with him and comfort him. I had to wait in my car for the doctor to call me over the phone to discuss his options. When the doctor called me, she immediately began explaining how serious she believed his illness to be, though, at this time they were not sure of exactly what was going on, but they did know it was extremely serious. Of course, they must tell you what all possible options are, and the one option she gave I, of course, did not like, so as the tears started to form in my eyes, I just kept telling her, no, you have to help him, which she was trying to do, but she also had to make sure I knew how much a financial responsibility this would be. Still, I said, you have to help him. So, they did what they could to stabilize him, and they began testing in hopes of finding the answers they needed in order to give him the best care. It was not until Thursday that they finally had gotten through running all their tests, and the last test they ran was the pathology test. Once this test came back, they were able to pinpoint the problem better, and so they told me that my poor little Upsy has what is called chylothorax. This condition is such a rare condition, and it is extremely serious. Chylothorax is when lymphatic fluids, or chyle as the doctors explained it to me, accumulates in the pleural cavity, which is located between the lungs and inner lining of the chest wall. Typically, about a teaspoon of clear fluid will be present in this space in order to keep the lungs lubricated so that they do not adhere with the chest wall. However, when chylothorax is present, about a liter of fluid might be present in this space. During Upsy's initial tests they found a lot of fluid, and they were even more concerned when they did not find a lot of bacteria in the fluid, because as they explained, if there were a lot of bacteria in the fluid it would most likely have meant that the problem could have been resolved a lot easier, as it would have indicated a different illness that would have been easier to treat. Unfortunately, Upsy was discovered to have this chylothorax illness. When a diagnosis of chylothorax is made, it means two abnormalities have occurred. The first is that the pleural effusion is present, which means that there is an abnormal amount of fluid accumulating in the pleural space surrounding the lungs as mentioned above, and this will limit the cat's ability to expand their lungs completely, causing them to breathe shallowly yet rapidly. Unfortunately for some cats, this condition will lead to respiratory failure and death. The second abnormality is that the clear fluid in the pleural space that normally would be there has been replaced by chyle, which is a milky white fluid from the thoracic duct. This fluid forms from lymphatic drainage from the intestinal tract. It is high in triglycerides, which is what would give it a chemical composition and distinct color. The thoracic duct is what normally transports chyle to the cranial vena cava, which is a large vein. Once it is transported to this vein, it would normally be able to be processed further by the body. When chylothorax is present, though, the chyle drains into the pleural space instead of the cranial vena cava. Does your brain hurt yet? Because mine surely did after Upsy's doctors explained all of this to me. Especially, when I had not even had time to process half of this yet, and then they told me again how dangerous his illness is and how he would need immediate surgery. Right away the surgeon explained to me how Upsy's illness is so rare that unfortunately there are not a lot of cases out there for comparison, and the surgeon, as well as Upsy's other doctors, explained to me how the surgery could potentially not be successful, and they once again explained how much a financial responsibility it would be, but they believed it was the best possible treatment option. Chylothorax is an extremely devastating disease, and the success rates are less than satisfactory, but what else could I do? I had to act quickly because they had the team all ready to go. So I had to decide, and I believed that the surgery was Upsy's best option, so I gave my consent for Upsy to have open chest surgery, a surgery called pericardectomy. Can you imagine having to make such a decision for your best friend? Pericardectomy is the surgery done to remove the pericardium, which is the heart sac. This is a major surgery and is done by opening the chest between the ribs, which is what they had to do for Upsy. Upsy now has a chest plate in from the surgery, and he still has a tube in so that they can drain the fluids if ever need be, which hasn't been necessary, praise the Lord, for about 2 years. Waiting to find out if Upsy's surgery would be a success was very stressful, but I knew he'd have to make it, especially after knowing how magical he is. When the doctors told me that Upsy was breathing good on his own, I was so relieved. Hearing that the amount of fluids they were draining before he came home had been decreasing was like music to my ears, and as worried as I was, I knew he'd be okay. Upsy was only 4 years old at that time and he had been through so much already. He did not deserve any of it, but unfortunately it happened. So I did my best to make sure he received the best care possible, and I spent a lot of money on his hospital bills, and I just about went through all my savings to pay for all his treatments and tests during his day and a half hospital stay. Luckily several very kind family members and friends gave Upsy a donation, which helped and meant everything to us. I love Upsy just as deeply as you might love your husband, wife, best friend, sister, brother, mother, father, aunt, uncle, child, etc. Upsy is my bestie, and for him I would literally do anything, so I did whatever was in my power and we made it through. Thank you for joining my marvelous Upsy for part 1 of his story. Join Mr. Upsy in a few weeks for part 2 and hear about what recovery life was like for Upsy at home. Then a few weeks later we'll tell you more about where he's at now. So please subscribe for more of Upsy's story, as well as more of his super adorableness. Thank you so much, and please know I could not use my own voice for Upsy's story as my emotions would only make it impossible to understand me. Have a marvelous day everyone.